What if the most valuable man at an auction was not the strongest, but the one who understood everything around him better than anyone else? Welcome to Story of the Black Past, a place where we uncover powerful and often overlooked truths from history. Stories of intelligence, resilience, and moments where perception changed everything. If you are new here, tell us in the comments where you are watching from, your city, your country, and the time you are watching this video. We always love to see how far our stories travel. If you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe and like this video. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful stories to life. Thank you for being here. Now relax, avoid all distractions, and pay close attention. Watch until the very end, because what you are about to hear is something you will not want to miss even for a moment. Tonight we travel to the port of Galveston in the year 1859, a place where ships arrived carrying more than goods, where people were assessed, measured, assigned value, and traded as if they were objects. On this particular day, something unusual happened. He was not the largest, not the most physically imposing, not the one who drew attention at first glance. And yet, by the end of the day, he was the one everyone was watching. His name was Elias. At least, that was the name spoken. He stood calmly among others, not restless, not fearful, but observant, watching everything, not just the people, but the process, the patterns, the way decisions were made, the way value was assigned. And that alone made him different, because most were focused on survival, but he seemed focused on understanding. At first, it went unnoticed, because intelligence is not always visible, especially in a place where only physical strength is expected to matter. But then, something shifted. A trader spoke. Elias responded, not with defiance, not with hesitation, but with clarity, a response that revealed something unexpected, understanding, precise, measured, beyond what anyone anticipated. The trader paused, not because of what was said, but because of how it was said, because it suggested something deeper, something that did not fit within the assumptions of the moment. Others began to notice, small exchanges, quick observations, moments where Elias seemed to anticipate what would happen before it did, not guessing, but knowing. And that is what made it unsettling, because knowledge, when it appears where it is not expected, disrupts everything. The bidding began, but it did not follow the usual pattern, because now he was not being evaluated only for labor. He was being evaluated for something else, something less visible, something harder to measure, something that could not be easily controlled. And that created tension, because systems depend on predictability, on knowing exactly what is being acquired. But Elias did not feel predictable. He felt aware. The final bid was higher than expected, not because of certainty, but because of curiosity, because those bidding sensed something, but could not define it. And that made him both valuable and uncertain. He was taken from Galveston to a plantation further inland, placed within a system that expected him to function like everyone else, but he did not openly, not in a way that created conflict, but in something more subtle. He adapted, quickly, precisely, understanding routines faster than others, recognizing patterns, anticipating outcomes, and that began to stand out, because adaptation is expected. But this was something more. This was awareness, the kind that observes the system itself, not just one's place within it. And that is where the mystery began, because it was not clear how he knew what he knew, or how he saw what others did not. As this story begins to unfold further, one truth becomes clear. This was never just about intelligence. It was about perception, about seeing beyond what is presented. And once someone begins to see that clearly, everything changes. Quietly, completely, and in a way that cannot be reversed. The shift did not come all at once. It unfolded slowly on that plantation beyond Galveston, because what Elias carried was not something loud. It was not something that demanded attention. It revealed itself in moments, small, precise, unmistakable. He learned faster than expected, not just tasks, but systems. The way instructions were given, the way decisions were made, the way authority moved through space. And once he understood those patterns, he moved differently, not in defiance, but in awareness. He placed himself where he needed to be before being told, completed tasks before they were fully assigned, adjusted without correction. And that consistency began to stand out, because it removed something the system relied on: delay, correction, control through repetition. But Elias did not require repetition, and that created something unfamiliar, because when someone does not need to be corrected, they cannot be shaped in the same way. The overseer noticed, at first with approval, because efficiency is valuable. But then something shifted, because efficiency became something else: prediction. Elias began to anticipate instructions before they were spoken, react before commands were given. And that is where uncertainty began, because anticipation suggests understanding, and understanding suggests awareness, and awareness is difficult to control. The plantation owner began to observe him, not openly, but carefully. Because something about Elias did not settle into expectation, it moved just beyond it. Conversations were tested, questions asked indirectly, situations created to reveal something. But each time, Elias responded with the same calm precision, never revealing too much, never revealing too little, always exactly enough. And that balance became the center of the mystery, because it suggested control, not control of others, but control of self. And that is something the system could not easily account for. The others began to notice, not as a threat, but as something different. A quiet example that something within a person could remain untouched. That even within structure, there was space, small, but real. And once that idea appears, it does not disappear. It grows, quietly. Elias was not disrupting the system through action. He was revealing something about it, that it relied on assumption, on limitation, on the belief that those within it could not see beyond it. And once that belief is challenged, even quietly, everything begins to shift. Not in structure, but in understanding. And once understanding changes, everything else follows. And even as time moved forward on that plantation beyond Galveston, what Elias revealed did not fade. It settled deep into the way everything was understood. Because what he carried was not just intelligence, it was awareness, a kind of awareness that could not be easily controlled, because it did not rely on instruction, it did not depend on permission, it simply existed, and that is what made it powerful. The plantation owner adjusted, not outwardly, but in how he approached Elias, more cautious, more observant, because he now understood something clearly, that what stood before him could not be fully predicted. And unpredictability changes everything, because control depends on knowing what comes next. And Elias did not follow that pattern. He followed understanding, and understanding allowed him to move differently, to respond differently, to exist differently. The others felt it, not as a disruption, but as a shift, a quiet realization that something within them could exist beyond what was expected, not in action, but in perception. And perception is where change begins. Elias remained unchanged, always. That was what made it lasting. He did not escalate. He did not challenge openly. He did not draw attention to what he understood. He simply continued, calm, precise, aware. And that consistency became something the system could not fully absorb, because it did not break rules, it moved around them, and that is more difficult to confront. As this story reaches its final reflection, one truth stands above all. Elias did not need to fight the system. He understood it, and in understanding it, he moved beyond its expectations. That is where the true mystery lived, not in what he did, but in what he saw, because once someone sees clearly enough, they are no longer fully contained by what surrounds them, even if they remain within it, not in action, but in awareness, through thought, through perception, through the moments where something feels just slightly beyond control. And when those moments come, just like before, everything feels different. Not visibly, not dramatically, but enough to remind you that intelligence is not just knowledge, it is perception. And once perception reaches a certain point, it cannot be limited in the same way again. And even now, after everything has settled into stillness, there is still one final understanding that remains, because what Elias revealed on that plantation beyond Galveston was never meant to be measured. It was not something that could be recorded, not something that could be fully explained. It was something that could only be recognized. Quietly. In the moments where perception shifts, in the moments where something feels just beyond expectation, because what he carried was not just intelligence, it was clarity, a clarity that allowed him to see the system not just from within, but as something that could be understood. And once something is understood that way, it loses something, its certainty, its completeness, because it is no longer unquestioned. It becomes visible, and what becomes visible can no longer remain absolute. The plantation continued. The structure remained. Everything appeared unchanged, but something within it had already shifted, because those who observed Elias had seen something, not fully, not clearly, but enough to understand that what they believed to be fixed was not entirely fixed, and that understanding does not disappear. It stays, in thought, in awareness, in the quiet moments where certainty begins to loosen. Elias remained, as he always had, calm, precise, unmoved, but his presence had already done what it needed to do. It had revealed something that could not be taken back. As this story reaches its final breath, there is nothing more to uncover, only something to carry with you. That intelligence is not always about what is known. Sometimes it is about what is seen, what is understood beneath the surface, what is recognized without needing to be explained. And once something is seen that clearly it cannot be unseen, it becomes part of how everything else is experienced, not in the past, but in that clarity, waiting. For the next moment it will be recognized again, and when it is, just like before, everything will feel slightly different, and that difference will be enough to remind you that some minds are not confined by the systems around them, even when everything else appears to be. And once that is understood, everything changes, quietly, completely, and forever.